Coinbase, 4% APY on USDC deposits. Okay, sounds kind of boring. If you're a DeFi degen, 4%, laughable. Get out of here. But if you're mom and pop and you have a savings account and your savings account is giving you approximately zero yield on your savings, this is actually quite interesting, and it represents Coinbase, I think, expressing its most direct, I don't want to say attack, but shot across the bow of traditional savings accounts everywhere. This is interesting to me. I think we're going to see more of these yield products come out. We obviously saw something from Compound yesterday that was more targeted toward fintechs and neobanks, but this is something that run-of-the-mill Coinbase users can do to get a little bit of yield on their idle savings. I'm going to throw this to you, Jen. What do you think about this savings product? Is this something that banks should be worried about, or is this Coinbase giving banks a run for their money, or are we still way too far off from that being a reality?
I think it's definitely something banks should be worried about. When I think about the mainstream audience, though, I think that while trust is deteriorating when it comes to fiat currency and central banks, there is this kind of relationship between the general person and a bank where we think we put our money in the bank and it's safe there. I know that's deteriorating. This product feels like it's going to take a little bit more for everyone to kind of wrap their heads around. And so I think it is definitely the future. I think banks should be worried about it. And I'm just really interested to see what the uptake is going to be. Naomi?
Yeah, I think it's kind of this very interesting hybrid, this middle ground between banks and the DeFi world, because we've seen, in the DeFi space, 300% yield per minute, and people are like, yay, and they put all the money in, and then they lose all their money, and then they put all their money in, and it's kind of this giant gamble, this huge risk, but people love it, and it's really one of the few options out there where people can actually make, kind of passive income on their savings. You stake something, you get yield, and then banks, they're quite right. We haven't seen interest in bank accounts in the US for a long time. In Australia, I think it's somewhere around like 2.something%, and that's for like a long-term deposit account. But in America, you can't even put money in a long-term deposit account at most banks. Chase has certainly not offered that for years and years. And so there's no way for people to earn money on their parked savings. So they know if it's just sitting there, it's losing at least 2% a year in inflation, a lot more at the moment as inflation has risen. And so now you've got Coinbase, which is kind of this interesting, they're in a very unique position, right? Because they have this FDIC insured accounts on the fiat side. So they've kind of garnered that trust from people where they say, we're kind of like a bank, a crypto bank, put money in us, but also access crypto. Now, obviously, these accounts are not FDIC insured. They're not part of that because they don't have FDIC insurance for the crypto part of Coinbase. But I think people still associate Coinbase with a more kind of trustworthy, traditional bank type model. So the fact that they're able to offer yield to people without people having to take the risk of going the DeFi route and wondering whether there's going to be a bug in the code or whether there's going to be a hack, some sort of, a flash loan attack or something like that. I think it's a very interesting product that may, attract a lot of people. But Will, I'll throw to you.
I'm going to take the opposite side of this just for fun. I think in these cases, you have to look at where the yield is coming from. So there's always that saying, like, no such thing as a free lunch. And here, Coinbase isn't just, they don't just have 4% interest on all these reserves sitting aside that they're willing to give out for free. Where it's coming from is speculative token purchases, typically by users on their platform itself. So I got an ambulance going by, trying to save me from Naomi. She's going to attack me in a second. So I think in general, like, we look at these high yields, especially in DeFi, and the reason those yields are so high, why we get between 10% and like 100,000% yield a year, is because people are buying tokens for speculative prices, and then that just funnels right back into interest for if you're staking or yield farming or whatever. And Coinbase is just doing a miniature version of that. So, like, should banks be worried? I don't think so, because at some point yields dry up because people stop buying speculative tokens. Like, at some point the bear market comes, and these tokens just don't have any value.
And that's the key thing to keep in mind here. So yield farming is a great parallel. You have the yield farming opportunities pretty much like at certain points in the life cycle of a DeFi product, because they're trying to attract that capital. And this 4%, there's no guarantee that's going to last longer than a month, 2 months. Who knows? It's up to Coinbase. They can change it any time. What I'm really curious about here is whether there's a relationship with Circle, because what this does, whatever it does for Coinbase, it's probably really good for USDC. I do not know what kind of liquidity you're going to have in terms of using that USDC while it's deposited. So, for example, if you're thinking about displacement of Tether for traders, that might not be a thing that you can combine with getting this 4% yield. But it certainly seems like there's a competitive question here for Tether. If you're going to hold USDC and you get returns on it via Coinbase, then why would you hold Tether? So that's and I don't know if Circle has anything to do with this, but I would be curious to learn more.
Yeah, it should be worth saying. So USDC is administered through Center, the Center Consortium, which has 2 members, Coinbase and Circle. So Coinbase and Circle very much tied up in the fate of USDC, which lately seems to be picking up quite a bit of momentum as perhaps the most above board dollar-backed stablecoin in the market. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with USDC on this one.